I care about people, and I've done a lot, like I'm going to tell you now real quick, and that's the same as you. They padlocked their door with a chain, put them out of business basically, unless they paid a sizable amount of money on back payroll taxes. Well, they had some relatives that were wealthy that they had borrowed money from once before, and they said, well, we'll just go borrow money from them again. And they said I'll never forget, it was the John Marshall Hotel in Richmond, Virginia. We had this meeting, and these relatives were irate. They said, you've come to us again. You didn't pay back the first time. You're in the same position, and you're squandering the money. You're not dependable. You didn't do what you say you're going to do. The younger son, he got involved in drugs and other things, and the company was in trouble. And the father had suicide notes on the chair when I'd come in. He was 72 years old, had suicide notes. The son that was his partner was not living right. So we entered this hotel room, and they needed about $55,000 to settle up with the Internal Revenue Service. And back in 1973 or 4, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money now. Anyway, the bottom line was this. The relatives were irate that they were even asking to get bailed out again because they had just taken the money the first time and not done right with it. And what they said was, if Steve will agree to be your manager and handle this money and your affairs, we'll loan you the money. And I would not, they said, would he sign a contract to do that? Because they trusted me. And what I ended up doing was I said, I'm not going to sign a contract, but I will take the assignment. And I dropped out of college because I needed to work full time for them. And I was 6 weeks from graduating college. But I probably wasn't going to pass anyway, no. But the point was, I decided that this is my life vocation, is to be able to help people through financial management and affairs like that. And when I dropped out, I made the choice that I can put off my education for a while because I've got a real life circumstance here that needs me. If I hadn't agreed to it, they're out of business. And there were 12 people that worked for this company that were just employees other than the 2 owners. And so that's kind of the direction of my life, Richard. And, I dropped out of college. I was out for a whole year, but I did go back. But my mother, she was pretty upset that I dropped out, but she complimented me when I told her the whole story. And I turned this company around, and they got everything straight and went forward. But I think that sometimes people think they want to be a certain kind of person, but when they have the opportunity, they don't see it. And so I don't know if that's a decent example for what you just talked about that I'm trying to amplify, but I knew that these people needed me, and I did what was necessary, and I did turn it around. But sometimes life doesn't have to be on the same path that everybody else takes, the same time frame. But what I do want to tell you is sometimes people will put their own desires and wants and needs ahead of other people, and they miss an opportunity that would have been far, far better. And that's the third thing that I got out of what you said a minute ago. A lot of people, I ask the question again, why do people not do what they say they're going to do sometimes? Why do people make a commitment and not follow through with it? And I think one of the key reasons is that they're quite selfish, and they're afraid that if I take the time to do that, it's taken away from something else that I might rather do for myself. Do you think that makes any sense?
I believe that obedience is something that we learn. And I'm not sure everybody's motive is purely selfish. I guess in some ways, yes, but it is not wrong to consider your needs, in many cases, ahead of the needs of others. But it is far better to realize that your needs are met so that you can help meet the needs of others. So there is a learning process. But one of the things that you said when you dropped out of school and served in the capacity of helping this company actually become solvent again and could function, is that you did something that I guess they were expecting, that you would sign a contract, that you would commit to what they expected. But in reality, you were probably exercising simple obedience to what God had presented to you. You set aside your own plan for being able to finish school. You helped these people. I'm sure that they appreciated it. But more so, you probably learned something in that process. And that was, you were obedient to what God said before you at that time, and he took care of the rest. When you were able to finish the work with that particular company, you were able to return to school, finish your plan of education. God had prepared a way. But the lesson that you learned, and the lesson that we learn going through obedience, is we become a different person. We actually are becoming more like him. And what you said earlier about being selfish, people not wanting to do what they say because they're selfish and they don't want their plans to be changed for the plans of others, that could be, in some ways, a part of that. But I think it is more important from a positive view that we learn that God is really merciful. He's really willing to teach us if we're willing to listen and obey. And he is more willing for us to learn than in many cases we are. And so he gives us countless opportunities to find out. This is what is expected. This is what it means to love me. Because it says, if you love me, you're going to keep my commands. And I think the simplest command is we love God with all of our heart, all our soul, and all of our might. But he says that there's a second commandment, which is actually tied to that. And that is that we're to love our neighbor as ourselves. If God puts such emphasis on how we are to show love one to another, then obedience is looking for the ways that he opens avenues for us to demonstrate that love. It's not so much what we say, it's what we live before the people that see us. They learn more from what we do than from just what we say.
Richard, I just love the conversation. When you talked earlier about praying now and not putting it off, I can't tell the listeners the number of times that you and I have communicated and talked with each other in a personal way about what's going on in lives and different circumstances and so forth. And you have said, Steve, can we pray now, or let's pray? I mean, it's just that natural. And there hasn't been one time in the 3.5, 4 years that, I guess it's getting close to 4 years that we've been friends, that your prayer hasn't given me a certain kind of a hope. It brought me closer to the Lord, is what I'm trying to say. It's cleared me to where all of a sudden I kind of got a clear focus on what it's really going on and put it in kind of a perspective. And you know, when it comes right down to it, I think this show that we're talking about, when people don't do what they say they're going to do and how it hurts themselves, it hurts others, that they've inconvenienced, whatever the reasons are. Some are just sad because the person might want to do it, but just can't get up to do it because they're afraid to do something. You know, they have inertia, whatever the reason. I mean, hey, this goes in any direction people want. I'm not saying that everybody that doesn't do what they say they're going to do is a bad person. I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying that if a person has a life pattern, does not have the habit that you're speaking to of being obedient, and we're tying obedience to the Lord and trusting the Lord into doing right by what you say you're going to do, following through with it. If a person doesn't follow through, and people know that this person is a habitual, not telling the truth person. I'm not going to call them a liar, but if their personality is that they talk a lot but don't do what they say they're going to do, they're not going to get real far in life in a successful way, because they're not going to have trust. Now, one of my daily scriptures myself is Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. What I'm saying is that we want to talk street language here, because maybe some people listening spend a lot of time on the streets. Maybe that's where they call home. Your street credit's not going to be very good if everybody knows you as someone that never does what you say you're going to do. You cannot go but so far in life just within yourself, whether it's for selfish reasons, just to get what you want but not care about others. That's part of it. Just to get real serious, my dental hygienist a couple weeks ago, after I had the first show on that we're doing these shows, you're the second follow-up to episode 159, From the Lip to the Hip is a Pretty Far Distance, where my mother kind of gave me a reality of life that, Stevie, you can't depend on everybody. Not everybody says what they're going to do. Okay? Talk is cheap. That's what we're talking about. But, the converse of that is talk may be cheap in some people's expression, but talk is also a conversation is one of the greatest things that we can ever have, and it's absolutely free. And that's another thing I've enjoyed. I'm a people person. Everybody knows it. I've got 161 episodes where we talk for close to an hour. We can do it all day long. I love conversation with people. I love getting to know people. I love being there for people. That's why I found it right thinking. But the point is that I believe that if we ever have the opportunity to do something for someone else, by all means, we should try our very best to fit that in. And one of my laws of my life, one of my rules, I'll call it, whenever anybody seeks me out and wants conversation with me or seeks counsel from me or wants to spend time with me, I just try to do that, because I think that's what the most important thing in life is for me, is to be there for others. And Richard, you're always there for me. But the concept of trust is what I'm talking about. If people get to where they're not trustworthy, they're going to have a hard time going through life, and they're going to find out that their life today is not going to be much different, maybe worse, in 5 years and in 10 years, because you're not going to get far in life if you're not a person that can be trusted. And so would you try, we got maybe 7-8 minutes left on the 55 minutes here. Would you try to simplify this? I mean, what you said is absolutely beautiful. We could end the show now and just say, God bless to everybody. I think people get a great deal out of this conversation. It's what I knew it was going to be, Richard, by bringing you on the show. It's from a godly perspective. Would you try, though, to relate obedience to God and developing that habit, which is what we're trying to say this show is, sooner than later, to having success in life and having life be a good experience?
Well, I think that a lot of what is defined as success in a worldview is not necessarily the same as success in a godly view. And the tendency is that if we measure success by material gain, and I'm not saying that material wealth is wrong. I'm simply saying if we measure our success by that instrument, we probably miss some of the greatest lessons that are taught when we don't necessarily have that material gain, when we really do draw closer to God. And, it's very much the method of being able to decide, do we have a need? this particular time frame